All right, I've got my watercolor all dried off. It's nice and warm to the touch. There's no cool areas. What I usually do at this step, after I get my first wash in, I'll usually come back in with a kneaded eraser and I just kind of take out any of the pencil lines that I don't really need anymore. So some of these ones that I didn't go over with paint or water, I can lift those out. The other ones will probably just stay there and I'll use those for my guidelines. But I just kind of go around and just take out just a few of those pencil lines. Just cleans it up a little bit. And I use a kneaded eraser because it's nice and soft. You don't want to use a hard like pencil eraser. It'll mar your paper. So you want to use a nice soft eraser. All right. So now I've got my value sketch here that I'm kind of looking at. So my roadmap I'm kind of following along. I've got some darks in the handle here, some darks at the base of my teapot. And I just want to add just a few darks in. I'm probably going to go down in a brush size. This is a number 8 round, just so I have a little bit more control. Get it nice and wet. This round, this wash, I'm working dry paper with wet paint, so wet onto dry. So I'm going to come back in with my cerulean blue. Just going to mix up a little bit thicker consistency here. It's not dripping off my brush, so it's not quite as wet as my first wash. It's just a little bit thicker. If I look on here, I want kind of the bottom of this teapot, I want a little bit more color on it. Here I'm going to cut out this leaf shape, leaving some of that white. Rinse my brush. And on the second wash, I just kind of pull up that paint, rinse my brush again, pull it up a little bit more, rinse my brush, and I kind of keep pulling it up. And up here I want it nice and light because that's where my highlight is. And come back in and kind of smooth it out a little bit more. Run some of it into that shadow. I want a little bit of a dark on the inside of that handle. Kind of comes around. I'm going to rinse my brush. And just kind of pull off that outside edge. Grab a little more paint. And I'm going to do just the bottom of this spout here. Rinse my brush and kind of pull that out. You can see that teapot automatically just kind of comes out now a little bit more. Just by adding just a few extra darks into it. Down here, I'm going to kind of cut some petals in my, just some blue flowers down here. Nondescript, I'm just going to kind of pick out just going to make some petal shapes. Darken up some of those areas. Rinse my brush, kind of pull off that outside area a little bit. Just adds a little bit of blue foliage down there. Do the same over here. So I kind of leave that inside line a hard line, and then I kind of soften up that outside line. Just adds a little bit of a bounce of that blue around. Right now, looking at my value sketch here, I want to go nice and dark on the base underneath my teapot there. So now I'm going to kind of punch up my blue a little bit. I'm add a little bit of phthalo blue, which is just a little bit darker blue, and a little bit of my lemon yellow. Make up a dark green. Again, nice and wet, but you don't want it dripping off your brush. You want it just a little bit thicker in this wash. And looks like I kind of got down right against here. Cut those two leaf shapes out. Nice and dark right along that base. Rinse my brush. Just going to soften up that edge. So I've got a hard edge and then a soft edge. So I'm kind of pulling off this outside edge, creating a soft edge. And now I've got those nice darks up against that teapot. All right, I'm going to go back to my bigger brush. I'm going to work on some of this bigger area back in here. And here I'm just going to add a little bit of that phthalo blue, a little bit of the yellow. And I'm actually going to grab a little bit of alizarin crimson over here, just to darken that area up a little bit. Just so I have kind of a neutral color. I have a red, a blue, and a yellow in there. Just makes kind of a neutral color. Again, I want to kind of cut around these things. Looking at my value sketch, I'm nice and dark back here. Especially right up against my teapot here. I'm just going to kind of cut into that a little bit, nice and dark. I actually think I'm just going to kind of soften those edges back there. I don't really need to see what that is so much. It's an old stump back there, but for my painting I don't really need that too much. I can kind of take it out a little bit. Just a hint of it back there. It's just kind of the color going. Alright, looking at my value sketch, I want a little bit darker green down in here. Again, I'm just going to use my lemon yellow, my light yellow, and my dark blue, like a real dark green. I don't worry too much about my palette, sticking my brush in color with other color on it. Like I've got green and stuff in there. It all kind of works itself out, and I can always find nice yellow in there. So I don't slow down my process too much by rinsing my brush between every time I touch a new color. So just a little bit dark. Kind of follow my pencil lines. Rinse my brush. Pull off those edges a little bit. Watercolors is all about the layering process. You're just working layers upon layers upon layers, getting a little bit darker each time, each layer. On those I want to kind of create some veins in those, so I'm going to do those negatively, and that means I'm going to kind of come down along my pencil line, kind of come up the other side, kind of create just a split in that leaf, just for a little bit of a vein in there. Same thing on this one. Kind of follow those pencil lines. This vein's nice and curvy. Pull off that outside line, soften it up a little bit. And earlier on I was telling you about leaving some of these whites open. I kind of like to use some of those whites, even just go back in and just put a little bit of that pure color in. You can put that bright yellow in some of there and just kind of punch it up a little bit. You just want that to read as foliage. That's all it really needs to read as. Let's do a little bit more of a foliage piece over here. All right, so I don't want to overwork it too much, so I'm going to let those areas dry now, and then I'll come back in and put another wash in, just going a little bit darker in some of my areas, darkening up my teapot, putting those nice darks in it, probably darker, a little bit darker behind it, really bring it out a little bit more. But everything else is I'm going to keep fairly nice and loose. I'm not going to overwork it too much. I'm just going to leave it kind of the way it is.